It sure is nice to come home at the end of a long day and enjoy a podcast. But you know what makes the experience that much better? Relaxing with a few puffs of smoke from my McQueen pipe. At McQueenPipes.com, I was able to find the perfect smoking pipe to suit my nerdy, yet dignified sensibilities. I especially love that each pipe is designed and handcrafted by a true artisan, and that all of their pipes are inspired by fantasy books and movies like The Lord of the Rings. Being a bit of a hobbit myself, my pipe is called the Barrel Rider, but they've also got pipes for wizards, rangers, dragon riders, or even goblins. If pipe tobacco isn't your thing, no worries. McQueen Pipes has got you covered with attachments for vaping or even cannabis. Head on over to McQueenPipes.com and use the code BIOGRAPHERS at checkout to receive 15% off of your entire order. Go ahead. Treat your nerdy heart to something you'll cherish and enjoy your podcast listening experience in style with a McQueen pipe. That's Mac like mac and cheese and Queen like the band. McQueenPipes.com and use the code BIOGRAPHERS at checkout for a 15% discount on your whole order. Cheers, everyone, and happy podcasting.
I do hope you can see me today from where you are.
Ich bin ein Feeling.
If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. This modern world of science and invention is of particular interest to women.
The people, I would say, there is no patent. Would you patent the sun?
I regard myself as a soldier, though a soldier of peace.
Welcome to the Biographers.
Hey everybody, this is Daniel Newman coming to you, I guess not quite live, but into the new feed here. It feels like it's live because I'm recording this on Friday, the day of release, which normally Akiva and I do not do. And as you are noticing very quickly here, Akiva is not with me today. So as you all know, normally Akiva would be here and he really wanted to be, but I don't really want to steal all of his thunder necessarily, but essentially what happened was he and I were scheduled to record this week, but he had taken a trip the week prior to go and see one of his really good friends out in Kansas City. And it's a big, long tale, and I feel like he'll probably tell you a better version of it in an upcoming episode. But essentially, he drove out there. He had some car problems that prevented him from being able to drive back to Denver when he needed to, which meant he had to take a plane trip back. His plane actually ended up getting struck by lightning. He can tell you the whole kind of details of that, again, in a future episode here as well, where he can be a little bit more articulate with how everything happened. But then he had to go back to Kansas City to then find somebody to actually fix his car so that he could drive it back. And he's actually driving back from Kansas City right now. So he's on the road. And quite frankly, we just ran out of time, and it was due to some of these unexpected car troubles and getting stuck out of state. So you're just going to get me today, and fair warning, everybody, this is going to be a pretty short episode of Office Hours as a result, because there's just not a whole lot that we're going to be covering here. So this might end up being 10 minutes. It might end up being 15 or 20 minutes. Not really sure. It depends on how long I can sit here talking to myself. But hope everybody's doing okay out there. And again, apologies that Akiva wasn't able to make it. So just a couple of updates for everybody. First and foremost, kind of a prep for our next series. If you didn't hear it at the very end of our last episode, Akiva has decided on his new subject, and he's already kind of into the groove of writing out the episodes there, and I think he's getting pretty far along as well. But the person that he's going to be focusing on is a guy named Thomas Alexandre Dumas, who is the father of the writer Alexandre Dumas, who wrote things like The Count of Monte Cristo and Three Musketeers. So the reason he chose the father of Alexandre Dumas instead of Alexandre Dumas himself is because those stories, things like The Three Musketeers and The Count of Monte Cristo, were based off of his father's life and the things that he did. One of which was he was, I believe, a general. Akiva's going to spank me for getting that wrong. But he was one of the top commanders in Napoleon's army and apparently held so much clout that there were times that he was mistaken for being the superior officer to Napoleon. So I'm pretty excited about it. It's going to be one of Akiva's first series that he's ever done on somebody a little bit more swashbuckling, as we like to say, a little more rootin' and tootin'. Generally speaking, he's focused on people like writers and scientists and stuff like that, which is totally up Akiva's alley, but he's been saying for a long time that he wants to do somebody a little bit more, again, kind of exciting. So I'm pretty stoked to see what he comes up with and what research he's able to do on this new character. I think y'all are going to enjoy it as well, so do stay tuned. And then just as a heads up as well, before we get going into anything, I do have a couple of corrections that I wanted to go and address for Pancho Villa here in just a second. But before we do that, just again, wanted to give you the heads up that we are taking, it'll be not a 2-week, but a 3-week break after this episode of Office Hours. And really, it's just because my wife and I are taking a trip to Iceland. It's been a number of years since she and I have gone on any actual type of vacation. So this summer, we just sort of decided we really wanted to go somewhere, and we looked at a bunch of different places, and then we decided that we are going to Iceland. So that is actually going to be, we're leaving like 3 or 4 days after this episode airs. So I will ask all of our listeners out there, if you have ever been to Iceland and you think that there is somewhere that we just absolutely have to go. I've been trying to do my research to figure out the places that I really like, or I think will be cool, kind of a thing. So let me know if you have any suggestions, if you have a place that we absolutely have to go to, whether it's a restaurant or a museum or a landmark or whatever. She and I are going to have a rental car out there, so we'll be able to do a little bit of driving, but for the most part, we are going to be staying, within an hour or two of Reykjavik. So again, for any of our listeners out there, shoot me an email. I'll be checking my email the entire time that I'm in Iceland. So if you do have a suggestion for me, shoot us an email. It's going to be the biographers. I need to enunciate that better. thebiographerspodcast@gmail.com. So again, any suggestions or recommendations that y'all have, I would greatly appreciate it. I'll also add, just again, before we get going here, like I always do at the beginning of all of our episodes, or I've been trying to anyways, if anybody's enjoying the show and you want to just give us a little bit of support, it's going to be really, really appreciated. As of now, Akiva and I are doing this, I can't say pro bono, because we've been seeing our Patreon subscribers grow and grow and grow, and we're getting a little bit more funding, which is really exciting, and we're really grateful for that. But if anybody is able to support us who isn't yet, and you feel like you like the show and you want to give us a couple of bucks, everything is done at this point completely independent, kind of like a record label back in the 90s. We have no shadowy sort of money men over the top of us giving us money to do any of this. This is all just us saying, we think this is interesting. We don't really see anybody else doing what we're doing, so we like it and we're going to do it ourselves. So hopefully y'all feel the same way, our listeners out there. And again, if you can support us, we'd be really, really grateful. So I guess without further ado, because I don't really have a ton of other stuff that I really wanted to talk about today, again, without Akiva, there's not much conversation where he and I are chatting back and forth and having a good old time. So I'll just jump right into kind of the questions and corrections that I had written down for the series on Pancho Villa. Now, I'll also say for any of our listeners out there, it's definitely not too late. If you listened to the Pancho Villa series and you said, hey, actually, that's not quite correct, this is not quite correct, again, we're always open to suggestions or corrections, questions about stuff. Please do send us an email at thebiographerspodcast@gmail.com. So a couple of things that I wanted to address really quickly. So first and foremost, again, going back to the Pancho Villa series, in episode 3 of Pancho Villa, I misspoke and said that the Treaty of the Embassy was signed on February 8th, and I meant February 18th. So if there's any deep dive history nerds out there that were like, hey, you were off by 10 days, just wanted to throw that one out there. I was listening to it when I was editing through the episode and making sure everything was okay. And I thought, wait, I thought it was actually a little bit after that. And I went back and checked, and sure enough, I was wrong. So 18th of February, not the 8th. Next up is that in Pancho Villa episode 3, we talked about the female soldiers who fought in the revolution that were affectionately called Adelitas. Now, we weren't 100% sure on what that translated to, but from what I have read, the root of the word is actually Germanic, and it comes from the word Adela, which means noble. So Adelina or Adelita, from what I understand, basically means noble woman. So that's kind of where it comes from, is, just sort of a play on that Germanic kind of origin, and it's been adopted into Spanish, and Adelita means noble woman. Kind of cool. Also, I'll give a quick little shout out. I was in Northern California for a family member's wedding about 2 or 3 weeks ago in the kind of Saratoga, San Jose area. My wife and I went to a little Mexican restaurant called Adelitas, which, first of all, their logo, I nerded out on because it's literally a silhouette of a female Mexican revolutionary fighter, and there are two like rifles next to the silhouette of this woman, and the place is called Adelitas, and immediately I turned to my wife and I was like, oh my gosh, Adelitas, let me tell you. And I got all nerdy about what the actual origin of that was and why the logo pertaining to the name I thought was just so cool. So anyways, that being said, the food was awesome. Truly one of the best burritos I've had in my life. And I grew up in Los Angeles and I ate a lot of burritos. So please go and check out Adelitas in San Jose. I believe it could be. It's at the San Jose area. I want to say San Jose specifically. Anyway, go check it out. It's delicious. And again, really, really good food, really as a whole. All right, next up here. In part 4 of Pancho Villa, we talked about the Battle of Zacatecas and how after the battle, Pancho was going to try and take Mexico City, but was stopped by Carranza, who halted shipments of coal to Pancho. Now, additionally, I talked about how the USA stopped supporting Pancho, but I couldn't quite remember why. Now, from what I gather, it was kind of a strategic move from Woodrow Wilson, the current president of the United States, because he saw that Carranza and Pancho were on the cusp of fighting one another. So he stopped supporting Pancho with ammunition and supplies to try and mediate the conflict. So it wasn't so much that Pancho was denounced by the U.S. at that point, so much that the U.S. wanted to stop the conflict between Carranza and Pancho. And this was also kind of on the eve of World War I. So I think there was also this aspect where Woodrow Wilson was kind of going, this needs to stop because we've now got this fighting going on the Western Front in Europe, and that's going to explode into something massive, and we just can't have both of these things going on. We can't try to be, mediators between both of these, yada, yada, yada. So again, I think he was really just kind of going, I don't see Pancho winning, so I'm going to just stop supporting him and really give it to Carranza, because I do think that that's probably where eventually the government of Mexico is going to kind of come to, right, is what Carranza was leading. So in the episode, I think I said something along the lines of like, the U.S. denounced Pancho, but again, not 100% true. They did technically, but it wasn't a denouncement. Again, it was just like they stopped supporting it because they really wanted to shut down the rest of the fighting that was happening in Mexico. So wanted to clarify that. And last but not least here, in part 5 of Pancho Villa, I mentioned that Rodolfo Fierro died in 1915 by drowning in quicksand, but also that his body was recovered. Now, I couldn't remember the exact details, so just to clarify, Fierro died on October 14th of 1915, and his body was recovered by a Japanese photographer and combat medic named Kingo Nonaka. Let me say that again, because forgive me, I don't speak Japanese, so all these pronunciations are sort of new for me. I think it's Kingo Nonaka. Fairly confident of that. So anyways, yeah, he was a Japanese photographer and combat medic, and essentially once he discovered that Fierro had drowned in quicksand, he was like, well, this guy is, you want to consider him a hero or a villain. Either way, he was a big name of the Mexican Revolution, so I'm going to exhume his body from where it was, and ultimately now Fierro is buried in Ciudad Chihuahua, the capital of Chihuahua, in one of the kind of main big old cemeteries. I can't remember the exact one. I think it's even just called like Cemetery Chihuahua, something like that. Anyhow, just thought that was kind of interesting that somebody actually took the time to go and specifically extract Fierro's body so that it could be properly buried. That was a Japanese photographer and combat medic. All right, so that's all of the corrections that I was able to identify myself. Again, any of our listeners out there, if you listen to any of our series, any of our original series all the way up to now and all throughout the future, right? If you hear something that you go, hey, I don't think that that's quite correct. I think that there's something, that you have more information on that we don't. We're not pretending to be full subject matter experts on everything that we cover here. We do our best. We try to read multiple books, reference a lot of sources, articles, all different types of stuff. But again, that doesn't mean that we're perfect scholars on any of this stuff, and we're always open for feedback and corrections. So again, if anybody finds something, even in this Pancho Villa series, please send us an email at thebiographerspodcast@gmail.com, and we'll even give you a little shout out saying thanks to so-and-so for pointing this out to us. So I think that that's pretty much all we're going to do for today. Again, I said at the very beginning here, this was going to be a short one, maybe 15, 10, whatever minutes this is going to be. I don't have a timer clock going on or anything like that. And again, it's because my buddy Akiva, I miss you, man. He's not here. And quite frankly, he also has the rest of the microphone setup stuff at his house. So I had initially had the thought of like, oh, maybe I could get my wife Kat to do it. But again, or even Charlotte, one of our main kind of listeners and one of my old friends, Charlotte, was thinking, oh, maybe I could have her come up and we can do it really quick for a half hour or so. But again, Akiva has all the other mic equipment, so we just couldn't really make it happen. Hopefully that's okay with everybody. You give us a hall pass for today. Sometimes things happen that are out of our control, right? And in Akiva's case, he got stranded out in Kansas City and he wasn't able to make it back. But from what I understand, his car is doing better now and he's on his way home. So, buddy, if you're out there, I know that you're not going to listen to this immediately or anything, but I do hope you travel safe and get home so that we can get back going to our lovely little show here that we enjoy so much. All right, well, that being said, one more time, I'm going to remind everybody that we are going to be out for the next 3 weeks. I'm not sure the exact, I should have known the exact date off the top of my head, but 3 weeks from today. Normally we're doing a bi-weekly schedule here twice a month. We're just doing one extra week because, again, I'm going to be out of the country. So apologies if that offends anybody, but, just need a little break sometimes. So we'll be gone for a couple of weeks, but we will be back. And when we come back, again, we're going to be doing that series with Akiva on Thomas Alexandre, I want to say is how the French pronounce it, Dumas. So pretty excited about that. Again, thanks everybody for listening. We appreciate all of your support and taking the time to, absorb our show. And again, give us suggestions if you have any. But like always, do remember everybody, ignorance is not stupidity. It is the absence of knowledge. And hopefully you learn a little something today. See you next time.
You've been listening to The Biographers. For more information, please visit thebiographerspodcast.com.